Hello everyone, this is Ava from Soul GPS. Welcome to my channel. In this episode, what I wanted to talk to you guys about is what are the three primary targets of narcissistic abuse or psychopathic abuse for that matter. Most of us believe that these are the people who are either the empaths or the codependents, and that is absolutely the case most of the time. Of course, it depends how we categorize things and how we define them. And also, there's a lot of similarities between the two. There are also a lot of differences that need to be understood. I actually just shot a video about the difference between the empath and the codependent and who they are, how do they get created, because a codependent is not someone who is born. People with codependent tendencies or full-blown codependency are trained early on to learn to sacrifice themselves for the good of other people. And also we talk there about how we can recover from being codependent, some steps you can take in order to really be able to protect and revel in your empathic qualities. So in this video, what I wanted to do is talk about those two types of people and what are some of their main character traits, but also extend out into a third category of a person that is often omitted in many of these videos. And I know that I really identify with this kind of profile, and I'm sure many of you will too, because while we do, all of us, tend to look back into the past and try to discern what the hell happened, what made us do this, what made us trust these people. There are also some other qualities that are often overlooked that may not be obvious initially, because somebody, for example, who's high-spirited and extroverted does not necessarily qualify as a primary target of narcissistic abuse, but they are, and we're going to talk about why that is and how it happens. So number one, so we're going to talk about three different types. Number one is, of course, the good-natured empath, and it's a person who is an excellent listener, who has the ability to tune into their environment in order to discern what's happening. She can also, or he can also, almost like read other people's thoughts. Be able to gauge by the way that they move, the way they the way they connect, what's going on, what's bothering them, what may be ailing them. And so that there are people who are very present, can be very present with that, the space holders, so to speak. They have the ability to be selfless, but the mature empath, there's a difference between a mature empath and an immature empath, and that is, a person who's really self-aware, who is also aware of the fact that there are evil people out there. So they are the ones who put around themselves strong boundaries in order to repel toxicity and negativity, and form bonds with people who are good, and they're patient. They wait for people to really show them who they are before jumping into conclusions. So again, an empath is a good listener, a person who can tune in, have tendency for selflessness, but they're guarded, so they will not completely forsake their own needs and wants for the sake of another person, but they are able to show up and be present when they're needed. They're natural helpers and healers, which can be something that gets, actually often is, sabotaged by narcissists or psychopath once they lure those people into a relationship with them, because they will make them believe that they can be helped. And they like to keep that belief alive so that they will not lose them as a source of supply. What else? Good-natured empaths have a very strong moral compass, which becomes a target of attack and kind of thrill for toxic abusers, because they want to break that down and they want to make them do things that will be later ashamed of, in order to turn their best qualities into things that can be self-sabotaging. So again, another trap and a lure for the narcissist, who will eye an empathic person and take it as a so-called challenge and think of, how can I break them down and make them become my little slave. What else? They're highly cooperative. They're great team players. They like to, help other people and lend their hand in different things. So they're good. They're obviously a great target, because a narcissist needs someone like that in order to have their way, in order to make those people do things for them so that they can, go about their business. And remember that, people who are narcissistic and psychopathic, sociopathic, they're parasites and predators. They are not people who can self-sustain, who can generate abundance for themselves. They always prey on other people, and they look at how they can take advantage of any situation so that they emerge on top. It's all about winning for them. It's all about games. And unfortunately, in the beginning, it's easy to miss that because they put on the best show, and that's their talent. Different people have different talents. This is what they learn to do early on, to pretend that they're somebody else, so they hide their pathology. So now let's go into the second target, and that is the self-sacrificing codependent. It is the person who I think is most likely to stay in a relationship with a toxic person the longest because they find a sense of purpose. They vest their identity in the idea of being there for another person. They have not learned how to be there for themselves. It's all about others. That's how they get their validation. So they're kind of like the servant person. They can also be enablers. They can help people who have toxic behaviors to continue those toxic behaviors because they will please them. They will do anything that is required of them to keep their love, which enables that behavior and makes the relationship spiral down bit by bit. They tend to have a weak identity and boundaries. They will invest themselves in other people so that they can fill the void that's been left over from codependent training, which is always ignore yourself and help other people. So they haven't had the time to really get to know who they really truly are, but that is an opportunity that always remains available. What else? They can be very sentimental, so it makes them constantly think about the early times, the good times, and that keeps them on the hook. So they will contort their behavior, bend themselves backwards in order for the good times to return, which is something that the narcissist always looks to exploit. So these qualities obviously are going to bleed over each other. There's no fine lines. These are models. But there's something definitely to be aware of. There is a difference between an empath, a healthy empath, and a codependent, but they're all prime targets for abuse. And then there's the third target, which is, it has qualities of a little bit of both, mostly the empath, but it's not mentioned enough. And I would like to actually spend some more time talking about this person. And I call them, this is my little descriptions, the daring adventurer. It is a person who has very high confidence, who is extremely friendly and open, tends to be extroverted, has a low ability to discern dangerous situations. They have high tolerance for pain. They tend to put themselves into situations and scenarios that other people might be like, well, aren't you afraid to do this? Maybe, you should be careful there. And like, no, they're the adventurer. They want to learn. They want to try new things, new thrills. There is a little bit of a dopamine addiction there. They like that. They like to grow themselves. They like to explore, and they're hyper empathic. Of course, they will always tune into other people, which will draw other people to them. So they tend to be very popular. They tend to be very much so liked. They're free-spirited. They create their own adventures. They're very responsible people, highly intelligent. They achieve great success in their life. But they also have tendencies to be very impulsive, make rash decisions just because it feels cool. It feels fine. Let's do it. Let's have fun. Let's do that. So there's that little, as you can see, little margin there where it keeps their vulnerability really high. They tend to be very self-directed, and they can be also highly competitive, which when they get involved with toxic people, they will want to stay in order to sort of win, but not win the way that the narcissist does by destroying their partner, but more like win by making things right. Let's make things right again, right? And they also tend to be very highly focused on positive rewards. They're the undying optimists. So they will again get really hooked on the good times and sort of ruminate and almost obsess about those. So it will be much more easy for them to omit all the bad stuff that has happened, and it will make them, want to come back and rather than give up on the relationship. Again, this competitiveness can play a role. I'm not going to give up. I'm going to fight for this thing because I believe in it. I believe this person can be saved. They can be healed. And also they're excitement seeking. So again, that goes along with the adventure, goes along with the free spirit. They have high tolerance for pain. Also, they can take on a lot of weight. They can take on a lot, and they can heal from this. That's kind of their trajectory where they've come from. They like to challenge themselves and then overcome those challenges, and they get a tremendous pleasure from that. So you can see how these are actually really wonderful qualities, but they need to be applied into a healthy context, such as, for example, in career, growing their competence, becoming better at something. It's great to be competitive with themselves, to keep outdoing yourself. It's wonderful to be self-directed, know what you want, and so on and so forth. So these are people who have actually a really strong sense of self, but narcissists will target and psychopaths will target these people because they're attractive, they're magnetic, they can offer a lot, they're very resourceful, they are. Again, the empathy is going to make them really get into the story of the narcissist, who often comes up with the pity story, right, in order to test for high levels of empathy. And because they're so concerned, these targets, the adventure targets, they're so concerned with what other people think of them, that they will tend to also pretend that the relationship is okay versus when it isn't. So very attractive targets. And also, the idea of, seeking excitement. They tend to be kind of like the partners in crime with the toxic person, which will make them do things that they will later be ashamed of. So that's a trick that they use often. So that's more or less the profile of the daring adventurer. I'd love to hear from you, whether you identify yourself with any of these people, any other qualities that you can think of that I have missed. I'm sure there are a lot. And what you think about this concept, because I think that, being an empathic person and calling yourself, being aware of yourself as a target it's too broad, and then having this propensity for selflessness and seeking to help others all the time, that is very significant. But that also implies almost like a victim mentality. And a lot of targets, a lot of, people who have been through this are not victims. They're people who are very self-assured, who have thriving careers, and yet they keep on falling for these really toxic people. So so this is my little presentation for today. I hope you guys liked it. I thought it was helpful, and I will meet you in the comments below. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye.